talking about free speech, we're talking in the United States about the First Amendment to the Constitution, passed in the first Congress, ratified by the states, which says, among other things, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. That was put in there in the Constitution by Americans who were making a real leap from what had been the regime in the old world. Even in England, one of the freer countries of Europe at that stage, there wasn't a generally recognized right of freedom of speech. And the founders wanted to assert that right and guarantee it. Establishing freedom of speech then was an innovation. It was something unusual in the world. And I think one of the things that we ought to do when we consider what's in the Constitution, what's in the Bill of Rights, is open up our eyes, open up our minds to the fact that these were really new things at the time. They were daring and bold assertions of human rights, and they aren't to be taken lightly. We do recognize some limits to freedom of speech. You have libel and slander laws, civil actions, where you can sue somebody who says something bad about you in print or speaking orally, slander. We allow limits on speech for advocating violent overthrow of the government, for inciting imminent violence. There's a 1942 case called Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire, where basically when you say things that are likely to start a fight right there on the spot, the government can stop you for doing that. But in the case of Brandenburg v. Ohio, 1969, the court says, look, the speaker here was saying vile, violent, horrible things, and he's got a right to do that under the First Amendment of the Constitution. When you look at some of these campus cases where the campus authorities allow free speech to be voted down, issue speech codes, have free speech zones, which means you don't have free speech anywhere else. And the free speech zone, at Arizona State is where it's 120 degrees in the sunshine. When I went to university back in 1912 or whenever it was, there was this idea that universities should be havens of free speech, and that speech, the contents of which would be frowned upon in some parts of society, could be allowed in the campus. Now we have sort of the opposite view. You can say pretty much anything in your suburban neighborhood, but if you say anything on campus that make these snowflakes on campus feel like their feelings have been hurt, suddenly they've got a right to suppress it. That goes very much against the tradition of free speech in America. State universities which are part of the government, there are a number of court cases which say basically the government can't suppress speech. It can suppress violence and is allowed to do that. Well, you find these days a number of prominent people saying hate speech is not protected by the First Amendment. That ain't the law in the United States of America. And by the way, what is hate speech? Who defines it? I can hear some speech on TV from various people that sounds pretty hateful to me, but I think that it would be unfortunate if I could say, well, I can suppress that speech. I can have summon government to stop people from saying things I don't like to hear. Well, one of the problems with restricting speech and restricting what you call hate speech is that who decides what is hate speech? There's a lot of Republicans in this country that say the Democratic platform is hate speech. A lot of Democrats in this country say that the Republican platform is hate speech. Sometimes their criticisms may even have some intellectual validity. But the fact is that if you believe in free speech, it's pretty hard to set somebody up as a censor. President Obama made a statement about this while he was still president in connection with college speech things. He said you shouldn't suppress speech. If you disagree with something, speak out against it.
You don't have to be fearful of somebody spouting bad ideas. Just out-argue them. Beat them. Make the case as to why they're wrong. Win over adherents. That's how...
Disagree with something, speak out against it. State your own views, make your own arguments. I think President Obama was in line with basic American traditions when he made that statement, and the folks running colleges and universities wanting to suppress free speech are out of line with American tradition.